Hopefully everyone can see my screen. Yes, no?
Yes.
Yes,
Yep.
perfect. Okay, so apologies for that, everyone. You know, seemingly half people could hear us, half people couldn't. So trying this again, 20 minutes late, but not a problem. All right, so welcome to the V. Brownback VMware VCDX prep special. Yep, kind of going to blur through this to get us more time, and we'll run over, so don't worry, we're not going to cut it short. So yeah, if you guys have any questions, write them in the question area. I'll try to keep an eye on it. And yeah, you can tweet with #VBrownBag, and then a couple of the panelists will also keep an eye on it. On tonight, there's the four of us. There's Craig Kilborn, who blogs from vmfocus.com, myself, Greg Robertson, who blogs from the SAFAgeek.co.uk, Bobby, who blogs from Another Day in IT, that's Bobby Stanford, sorry, Bobby, and Renee van den Vedem, who blogs from VCDX 133 and who has recently become a VCDX. So some disclaimers quickly that we kind of went over in the first part. None of us are VCDX panelists, so in my blog on Professional VMware, when I said presenter/panelist, that wasn't meaning that any of us are panelists, that was just me meaning them the panel. So if you think any of us are panelists or not, if we were panelists, then half of us would have passed anyhow. So we're not panelists. We don't know, nor have we seen the scoring rubric that the VCDX is scored with, so we don't know how it's scored as much as anyone else. None of us work for VMware. This is all based on our own experiences and opinions, and it's not official from VMware, so what we're saying is not being proved or endorsed or anything from VMware. Obviously, the VMware guys are happy for us to do this, but they haven't gone to our slide deck, so it's nothing to do with VMware per se. And we fully believe that everybody can achieve the VCDX with dedication and hard work. And now you're back, that's perfect. Do you want to do this slide again? Start from the top.
Yep. Okay, so this set of announcements has come from John Aristide. He was okay with me talking about them previous to VMworld in August. So I'll just start from the top. So the first thing is that the VCAP and VCDX boot camps at VMworld will have the network virtualization track. So VCDX NV will be available sometime in 2015, from what I understand. Number two is that John Aristide is finishing a book that will be ready in the fourth quarter of 2014, which is called The Art of Infrastructure Design, a practical guide for IT architects. This is a publication that goes hand in hand with these announcements, the improvements to VMware education and also to the program, and also obviously to VCDX candidates when they're preparing their design submissions. The VCDX Mentor program has now been running, so the current batch of candidates, and I'm sure a lot of you that are online at the moment are part of the Mentor program. So there you have VCDX volunteers, so a shout out to those guys for volunteering their time. So it's basically a 3-month program with 4 hours per month of assistance. So there, John Aristide has developed 4 mechanisms that are a part of his book. The Discovery Phase Survey, the Design Decision Workbook, the Design Review Assessment, and also a sample design table of contents. So this is used to measure the effectiveness and the readiness of VCDX candidates as they go through the process, pre-submission and post-submission. The design workshops, which are held at various VMware conferences and events, have also been updated to match this new design methodology that John has been working on. There is a new infrastructure, or there is an updated infrastructure design workshop. So this is normally a 1 or 2 day class. So this is considered to be a professional level class. This has also been updated with the the VCDX way, the VCDX methodology. And we also have an advanced level course that's coming out that's approximately a week of infrastructure design. And I suppose the big one is Academy X. So this is point number 7. So this here is basically a master's level class that you would sign up for. It's 1 week of intensive design improvement and design analysis. And I think the end of that week you have mock panels, and it's basically, if you're a VCDX candidate, this is a paid course that you can use to assist you in your preparation.
Cool. For the VCDX mentor program, I know they are trying to get in, obviously, the people who are defending in July. So I know Craig and Bobby, I think you guys have already been allocated your VCDX mentors, but as Renee was saying, there is 52 VCDX volunteers. So if you get in contact with the guys and actually say, you know, I'm looking to do this, and maybe you've done both your VCAPs and you're still kind of building your design, they might still assign you a VCDX because I've got quite a few. And yeah, also if you know any VCDXs, if you ask them very nicely, you might have multiple VCDXs helping you out, which is always helpful and beneficial, and the guys are always really friendly. So yeah, I would recommend. For
sure, absolutely. The VCDX mentoring is instrumental to succeeding in the VCDX program. This is something we'll cover in the following slides.
Cool. Awesome. So I think we'll kind of all mix in here. So Renee was nice enough to do a lot of these slides. He's actually put in a really great amount of information. Some of this is a rehash of what Craig and I did at our LANVMAG, although Renee seems to have spruced it up quite nicely, which is always great. So yeah, question number 1. I got a lot of people this week on Twitter saying, great, I'm really excited for GCX thing. I think Andre Bierkus asked me, he said, what happens if you're somebody who doesn't do this stuff every week? So you're not a design person when you don't do it. And I think these kind of slides, partly we're trying to answer that question. I think it is achievable. Obviously, maybe if you don't do it as a day job, it might not be as easy with someone who lives and breathes it, but I don't think it's impossible. So yeah, kind of first kind of questions, and I think all of us agree, and anybody who's actually been trying to do this would agree. You have to have your support of your family and your employer, because yeah, it does take a lot of your own personal time. If you're able to actually do it as a project at work, that will make it a lot simpler. Although you will also have to probably use a lot of your own personal time. But yeah, if you want to kind of do pre-submission, then a lot of this is going to take a lot of time. Obviously, you can spread it over time, but social life is going to be severely impacted, and I would recommend warning your family, because yeah, evenings and weekends, even for, maybe not for the VCP, maybe I'm being harsh on that. Maybe if you're starting out, then it will be taking a lot of your personal time to do the VCP, but the VCAP is obviously a lot more challenging, and then the VCDX is really using a lot of your time. I think you guys would agree with that?
Absolutely, Greg. So this is Craig here. One of the things that I did after passing both VCAPs was I sat down and had an open and frank conversation with my wife, because ultimately it was really important to get the WAF factor, which is a wife acceptance factor, agreed, because without her support, I've got a young family, a 2-year-old and a 6-year-old. I knew that it was going to take a lot of my time. For myself, I started the preparation on the 1st of February to start getting my design together, which I'd already done a couple of years ago, and it took me in total 267 hours to get it to a point that I was happy to submit. However, since I've submitted it, I have seen a couple of issues that need to be clarified. So having the support of your family and also as well your employer is key.
Yeah, this is Bobby. So I didn't plan it out as well as I thought it would, and I didn't think that it would involve as much time as I originally thought. And I started after VMworld 2013, and it took so long to just get the ball rolling. And I was probably a month or two in and finally had like the talk with the wife, just saying, hey, like, I'm going to have to put a lot more time into this. So it is pretty involved, but once you get the ball rolling, you're well on your way. So it's just the initial setting everything up, because there is no template to use. So you just have to figure out how you're going to put everything in the document and cover all the bases. So those were the challenges I ran into off the bat.
Yeah, second question we kind of had was, do I have the necessary experience? And that's in a lot of different things, design, ITSM, and T-Skill breadth. Renee, I don't know if you want to explain kind of T-Skill breadth.
Yeah. So with the VCDX, so all of you guys who are VCDX candidates, as soon as you pass the VCP and the VCAP, you're already proven that you're an advanced guy who's got a lot of skills, and you're at a very high level. Where VCDX takes it to the next level is that the actual breadth of the skills that you need. Greg, could you just go to the next slide? I've got a diagram there that really nicely sums it up.
That one?
Yeah, I'm just waiting for the screen to refresh.
That's all right.
Just taking some time. Yep, okay, here we go. So the enterprise level architect is the guy who has the big picture view, and he liaises between the customer, okay, your customer, collecting business requirements, coming up with a conceptual model and linking that to a logical design. Then from there, he is responsible for making sure that all of those technology silos that you can see listed there, and liaising with the SMEs for design and also administration, so the actual implementation of the project. You have to be across all of this. Now, what makes the VCDX so tough is that you actually need to demonstrate that you have these skills, right? So that's why the documentation takes so much work. It is so tough, And as you push through, when you look at the VCDX program, you can basically break it into two sections. You've got pre-submission, okay, so that's where you've got a deadline where you need to submit. Then you've got post-submission, which is the countdown, the 60-day countdown, that 60-day sprint to the finish, to when you're standing in front of the panelists and actually defending your VCDX. And I suppose what's unique about that is that you have this marathon, and then you have this final sprint to the finish. And typically, the shortest I've heard of is 9 months. Me personally, it took me 18 months. I had one attempt and then I went back again. Just on your comment earlier, Greg, when I started, or when I made the decision to go for the VCDX, for me it was just an academic discussion, I suppose you could say. At the company that I work for, I pushed for VMware training, so I attended that, and then I set the lead, tried to set the example for my guys to do the VCP, got that, then I went, okay, let's try VCAP, did that, and then I kind of stumbled into the VCDX, and I thought that I could do it quite quickly, I didn't think it was going to be that big a deal, but I was completely wrong, It is a serious amount of effort, and the T-skilling component is the most critical part of it all. You need to give yourself the time to consume the information that you need to be a minimally qualified candidate. And I can't stress it enough. You really have to work at it. You just got to give yourself time to absorb that knowledge. Now, all of you will probably be an expert in probably 2 or 3 of those silos because you're already advanced guys, okay? The trick is you need to cross-pollinate, and this is where the study group is so important. You just need to share knowledge and help each other. So there, if you're in a study group of 3 guys and the other 2 guys have strong skills where you're weak and vice versa, then you can really help each other.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I think that's a big thing because, yeah, sorry, Craig, I'll just go on. I mean, Renee and Bobby and I were part of a study group because we obviously all defended at Friendly in April. And Renee's got a background in networking, whereas my skill set in networking is not great. And Renee being able to challenge me on a lot of networking stuff and say, oh, well, what happens if they ask you this question, and kind of covering that, I think was really, really helpful. Sorry, Craig, go for it.
I would say, guys, on the flip side, one of the things that a lot of people out there, and this includes myself as well, I actually thought that all of this was unachievable. I originally reached my VCP, and I thought the VCAPs were in a different league. It wasn't until I joined the employer I'm actually with now that I sat down and I reviewed a chap's VCDX design, and I actually realised that I knew more than I thought I knew. And then sitting down with this particular person for over 2 hours and having a discussion with them, they then said, Craig, go for your VCAPs. And it was only at that point, basically, that I made the leap of faith from VCP level to VCAP level to give it a try. And I realised that I did actually know slightly more than I thought I knew. And that's actually how I started on the VCDX track. So I don't want everybody to believe it's unreachable, because it's not, as Greg said at the start. It's about believing yourself and giving it a go.
Yeah, agreed, for sure. When you go through the VCDX process, you are your own worst enemy. As soon as you start believing and you put the nerves aside and just focus on getting it done, even up until the day when you do the defense, it's easy to freak yourself out. And if you have a look at my blog posts, I talk a lot about the mental preparedness and just believing and doing as much as you can to prepare. Practice, practice, practice. Work with panelists if they can help you, so VCDX mentoring, and just keep on doing it. And like, for instance, 30 days before I did my second defense, okay, I did a mock defense with Michael Webster, and I sucked. I sucked big time. And this is 30 days before I'm supposed to be defending. And then I joined the study group with Bobby and Greg, and we just started practicing. And even 30 days, I was able to swing it around, you know. So if I can do it, there's no reason anyone else cannot.
Yeah, kind of tying on to that, I guess the homogeneous questions earlier. Gareth asked, with regards to the VCDX, could you explain the level of difficulty compared to the VCAP? I don't know if you guys agree. Craig and I also had this question at the VMware user group presentation we did. I mean, for me personally, I would say that the gap between them is between the VCP and the VCAP. I would say the gap is almost the same between the VCAPs and the VCDX from a VMware perspective, but then with this T-skilling stuff, I think that adds on that additional part of complexity, because I think if you've passed the VCP and you've passed the VCAP, you should have a good chance of being able to do a design. Obviously, there's a lot of new stuff to learn. I think the gap between that, I don't know if you guys agree with that, but I think the challenge more for me is T-skilling.
Absolutely, because when you're doing your VCP and VCAP, it is all vSphere-centric. You're in the world of VMware software, and for most of us, that's the world that you've been living in for the past 5 or 6 years, right? You're very comfortable in it. As soon as you step out of those silos and you move into network storage, we'll come to a slide, one of the slides that I have there, but the thing that most VCDX candidates have the most problems with is storage, backup recovery, BCDR, and security, and operations. A lot of design guys don't work in operations, and then you have a lot of operations guys don't work in design. So there's this cross-pollination, this cross-skilling that you really have to beef up your skills.
Absolutely, Renee. And one of the things that I've been quite conscientious of over the last sort of 3 months or so is I work inside of a large organisation, and we've got lots of guys and girls as well who are subject matter experts in their particular area. So if there's been an area that I feel I'm weak upon, I've asked to spend a day with a person basically, whether it be HP Virtual Connect or looking at some backup and recovery product like NetBackup, for example, just to get a bit more of an understanding in that particular area to try and make me more rounded. So I would encourage anybody as well who has an opportunity to spend some time with people who are SMEs in their organisation.
Absolutely.
Cool. And then one last quick question, then we're going to, I guess, jump back to the first slide. So Don was asking, with respect to the experience, some of us don't work for enterprise companies or very large on very large projects. Is this a problem, or can we still do our best with a relatively simpler design based on SMB real-world requirements?
Yeah, there's really, for VCDX level designs, you want to have enterprise level business critical applications. We're using the full suite of vSphere products where it makes sense, because remember, it's all about simple, efficient designs that are delivering highly available business critical services, preferably multi-site. So multiple data centers, multiple sites.
Craig, you want to say something? Go, Bobby.
Well, yeah, I said I tend to disagree with that. I mean, there's always, you're looking for an exciting use case that you can show your expertise. If it happens to be a large multi-site, a lot of different project or VMware products, the better. But I think it was Scott Lowe's entire submission was like under 60 pages. So that you can make it as complex or as simple as you need to. But it just has to show that you're able to take requirements, feel out the constraints, figure out what the risks are, and make the design that is the right one for the customer. So I wouldn't say that, hey, you have to have some humongous, complex design to actually do the submission. If you're able to do a small one that has a great use case, I would say do it.
That's a great point, Renee. I think that, sorry to just interrupt there, Greg, for a second. It's choosing the right design for myself was quite difficult because what I tried to do was I got out the VCDX blueprint, and I suggest everyone gets a copy of that before they look at their design and look at the key areas: availability, manageability, performance, recoverability, security, and your design needs to meet all of those areas. I had a number of designs which were met 4 of the 5 areas, but then they didn't have security in there. So I knew basically if I was accepted to defend, then I'll be marked on that particular area. So I agree what Renee says, and I agree what Bobby says as well. It can be either a big design or a smaller design. It needs to meet the requirements of the blueprint. That would be my 2 pence worth.
Yeah, I think very quickly on that, I know a few guys did designs where they only had a number of hosts. So you can do it small, but it does have to meet the blueprint, as Craig says. I know if you don't have multi-site, I know I don't think I'm giving away anything on it. I know a few guys that were doing it, and I know one VCDX in particular, maybe I won't name him, but one VCDX in particular, he didn't have site failover in his design, but he was asked that in his defense because that is one of the things that's part of the blueprint, and he was prepared for that, and now he's a VCDX. But I think that's the kind of stuff that, yeah, as long as you're meeting the blueprint, it can be as big and complex as possible, and it can be quite small as possible. So I think, yeah, that's, that's kind of...
There's obviously 2 sides to every coin. And I suppose the main message is that when you go into the defence, you want your score based on your paper design, your paper submission to be as high as possible. Now, if you've missed business continuity, disaster recovery, you haven't talked about it at all, then your initial score as you go into the defence is going to be low. And what that does is it means they are going to have to ask you more questions about BCDR for you to prove your knowledge. So it's like Craig said, it's about covering the blueprint. The other thing is it's a question of how much time do you have, how much effort can you put in, because obviously you want to give it your best shot, right? And if you have a business critical application design that you can deliver, great. If not, then you're going into, if you're using, say, small, medium business, you can always submit it. Hopefully it gets through because it's your ticket to the defence. But my advice is business critical apps, multi-site designs. That would be my advice to you.
And one more question, guys, on that subject. Did you all go for Enterprise Plus licensing on VMware, or did you go for a lower version?
Enterprise Plus for me.
Plus.
Yeah. I had a unified communications component that was using standard, but everything else was Enterprise Plus. Let's face it, all of the HA goes for network I/O control, storage I/O control, storage DRS. My advice to you is use it because you need to show that you can provide quality of service across your virtual infrastructure.
Cool. So yeah, quick question on to that. So we say, do you have the money necessary? So it's approximated that we think it's about $3,000 US for the first attempt, and that's excluding training in your home lab. So you've got to be prepared for that. Obviously, if your company can pay for portions of that or all of it, that's great. But yeah, you are going to have to use some of your own money.
Or if you're lucky enough to be living in the place where the defence is being hosted, then that's obviously a bigger saving as well.
So that's a low-handed jibe to me because I was in the UK for that defense. But it's true, yeah. As I say, if you guys are, I mean, unfortunately, as far as I'm aware, there's no defenses at VMworld this year. So, yeah, I don't think that's going to tie in for a lot of people. But there is a large amount of defenses that should be local to most people. I was fortunate that the Frimley one was not very far away from my home, whereas Bobby flew out from the US and Renee flew out from Saudi Arabia. So, yeah.
Just in terms of cost. So, VCDX there's only one other program in the market that is the equivalent, in my opinion, to VCDX, and that's the Cisco Certified Architect, right? Cisco Certified Architect, just for you to show up, is $15,000 US, right? So for the VCDX program, and VCDX is actually a bit of a misnomer. I believe it should be called VCAR, VMware Certified Architect, but that's just down to naming. So to get that for $1,200 US is pretty amazing, and I know that VMware, for every candidate who is accepted to defend, they are actually investing a lot of money in the back end for you to attend the defense. So for us, it's $1,200 US to attend. They are investing a lot more just to set it up so that you can turn up and do your defense. So this is a value for money certification without a doubt.
Yeah, the thing is, so I know, they didn't do architects because in places like, I think, Canada and another couple of countries, excuse me, you're not allowed to say architect if you don't design houses, hence why they said expert. So I'm amazed Cisco got away with that, but I've heard that's the reasoning. Also, yeah, question you've got to ask yourself is, do you have the time? So as Renee said, some people have been able to do it in 9 months. Other people, it's taken quite a while, a lot longer. Obviously, how far you are down the line really matters. So if you've got your VCP and your VCAPs already, then you should be a lot further along the way than somebody who isn't a VCP yet. But yeah, it is achievable. I know, for example, one that pops into my head is Hugo Fan. He broke down a timetable for himself of how he wanted to do it, and he kept to that. So it is achievable, but obviously, I think what I recommended in last week's presentation at the VMAG to a lot of people and people that were speaking to me is I'd say start straight away, because the sooner you start, if you start building stuff, the less pressure you're going to have. And yeah, even if you've only got your VCP now, but you're thinking, oh, I've got a design and I at least know 10% of a design, maybe start looking at that now, start writing down stuff. That might save you a lot of time further down the line. And then
that's actually a very, very good idea. You should be on a napkin or a bit of paper. Just say, okay, how would I design a multi-site business critical app? And it doesn't matter what the application is, whether it's SQL Server, SAP, it doesn't really matter. What matters is the availability. Availability, RTO, RPO, maximum tolerable downtime, all that stuff. This is what matters. Quality of service, what types of workloads have you got in there? And you can just start putting something together, you know. Distance between data centers, you know, what's the latest?
Yeah.
Do I go metro?
Absolutely. I think going back to the time question, though, is that it's also as well planning ahead at least 6 months in your diary. If you know you've got some major events which are going to happen, my advice would be start, but don't set yourself any unrealistic time frames on it. Because one of the things that I massively underestimated, and I thought I knew what I was getting myself in for, was the amount of time and effort involved. And you are your own worst critic on all of this stuff. So, and you'll do your design and you'll walk away from it, read it again, you think, oh, that's pants. So you take it away and you'll do it again. And it seems to be a never-ending kind of circle, really. So just don't underestimate the amount of time required.
Yeah, and Andre, you're asking, so Andre sent in a question saying, if we currently have both the VCAPs, does that 9 months plus still apply, or is it potentially shorter? It depends. I mean, we've said 9 months to 2 years because some people have done it very quickly. I think the 9 months, yeah, it depends. As Craig kind of says, if you plan 6 to 9 months in advance, then you're potentially not suffer burnout. So Gareth, you've asked about burnout, and that's the same idea. Is if you do it too quickly, I know I did mine fairly quickly. So I have a full-time job as a consultant. I was working in the evenings and on weekends. I know Craig, you've also been doing yours pretty quickly. Renee, I think you said you estimated you put in 1,000 hours total for yours. Craig, I think yours was 78.
1,000 plus.
Yeah, so 1,000 plus. I mean, okay, guys, that is two designs, and Renee was crazy enough to almost rebuild a brand new design the second attempt. But that's the kind of stuff. That is the level of effort. Obviously, maybe Renee's is really impressive. It is the high end, maybe, of people. If you pass first time, maybe it wouldn't have been as much. But that's the kind of stuff that you do have to be aware of, and maybe the more you spread it out, the less impact it should have on social life, and it should just stop you from burning out, hopefully.
So can I just say one thing on failing and going for the next attempt? So from what I understand, these are the unofficial statistics that I've got secondhand from different people. So 1 in 10 will pass. 1 in 10 will pass, and 9 in 10 will fail. When you do your attempt the second time, your first attempt you'll get panelist feedback in a PDF document, right? And this is what you need to use to update your design tactically. You need to take a tactical view to what you're going to do with your submission, okay? Because you don't want to rewrite it. There's guys, I think it's Mike Brown, when you read his blog, I think he did 5 attempts, right? And he redid his design completely a number of times, right? So I personally think that's the wrong way to go. You should just take your current design, if you fail, and then just fix what's wrong with it, all right? And Bobby, are you able to just talk about your resubmission, how you felt about updating it?
Yeah, what I took is I got the feedback, walked over any of the areas that I felt that I was a little deficient in and needed to apply some more detail and understanding. I didn't do too many changes to my design document, but just enough that may score me some more points. And also walking through all of those, what's listed in the PDF that you get, you know, that's your automatic study points for your next defense attempt. Like, you know, I need to know this, expand on these 5 things, and, you know, I have a better chance next time.
Yeah, and I think that's the trick, taking a tactical approach, and then that way it really minimises the amount of time that you spend on your second attempt. So I think on average it takes 3 attempts to make the VCDX. This is what I hear. The most number of attempts that I've heard of is 5. There's a number of guys who get it the first time, like these are the guys at the top of the food chain. But you shouldn't measure yourself against that. It's a journey for all of us, and it's all about the journey. You know, even if you attempt, you fail, and you never do it again, you will be a better architect because of the journey that you've travelled. You know, and this
Absolutely.
is why it's important, and that's why it's important not to be hard on yourself. You know, the fact that you've got VCAPs out of the way, you've submitted your design, it's been accepted, you're already like up there. You know. Then it just comes down to presentation skills, you know, being able to think on your feet in front of the panelists, you know, and preparation and strategy and how you're going to answer this, how you're going to answer that, which we'll talk about on some following slides.
Cool. And then, yeah, last very quickly, you just got to choose which track you want to do. So there is, as Renee mentioned, there's now a 4th one. So there's a data center one, which is vSphere. Then there's a cloud, which is currently still vCloud. I don't know if that's going to incorporate VCAC or get people to pass in the new VCAP CID ones, and maybe that will start tying in a lot of that. There's the DT one, which has come out quite recently. I think, as far as I know, there's no VCDX DTs yet. I might be wrong on that, but I don't think there's any yet. I know a few guys are VCDXs already who are looking to submit for DT, and then the NV one's going to be the new one. And then I think a lot of the stuff on here.
I'm sure in
No, go for it.
And I'm sure there's a few DTs already submitted, I'm guessing. Just one thing on the tracks. Obviously, data center virtualization is effectively the foundation for everything else. So that's why you see a lot of DCVs, and obviously that was the first VCDX track that came out. We have, I think, 4 cloud VCDXs. Most of them are double. I think there's one guy who just went straight for cloud. He didn't bother with DCV.
Who is Garrett, who's actually on here? Garrett is one of the people on here listening. Right. Well done, Garrett.
Is he able to talk? Do you want to just get his experiences? Are you able to unmute him?
We can. I do realize that it's already 8 o'clock and we're only on like our 3rd slide. I knew we were going to be able to talk quite a bit. I don't know if Garrett is even interested or not.
Okay, fine. Let's move on.
Actually, Garrett's not on here anymore. He's dropped off. And then, yeah.
What about there's the other double VCDX, Magnus Anderson? Is he on?
Magnus is also, he signed up. I don't think he's on here yet either. He was on earlier. Yeah, and also I think one last question. Somebody, I can't remember, I think Manny, you were asking about you going in and putting in a, what's the right word, it's going to strike my mind, putting in a made-up design. The correct word is going to strike my mind at the moment. So
fictional design.
Fictional design. So
yeah.
It's late. It's late for me already. So he was asking about fictional designs and just kind of.
So fictional. Yeah, so fictional is perfectly doable. It's allowed. It's legitimate. Obviously, with fictional, the problem there is you don't have any real-world experience to apply to it. You know, it makes your life harder. And anyone who has got the VCDX based on a fictional design, that's very impressive, in my opinion. So you can do it, not a problem, but you're making life a little more difficult for yourself. But no one's there to tell you no. If you want to do it, go for it.
Cool. And yeah, so as James Carter was saying, what I was going to also aim at is for the DCV, you're allowed to put in fictitious. For all the others, I don't know for NV, but I'm assuming for all the others, you have to put in a real design. It has to be a real-world design. You can't make it fictitious. So, yeah, you've got to be able to do that. And as Manny was asking, you can submit it, but they recommend against it because it normally doesn't pass. I see a lot of things, and normally the guys feel they can find holes in it. Not saying you can't pass with it, but I think they say it does make it quite difficult for yourself. So I'm just looking. So we've said the BCP and VCAP, VMware Organized Bootcamp,
Yeah.
we've covered that. And then, yeah, kind of stuff on that. So, yeah, go through a lot of manuals, podcasts, blogs, publications, real-world sessions. There's a lot of stuff out there. I can't remember my numbers. I've put out a blog posting for my second attempt, and I've got like 10 books, 35 white papers that I'm going through, number of podcasts, number of Pluralsight portions. So there is a lot of resources out there, and especially if you want a cheat skill, then stuff like Cisco would be a good thing to learn. Storage wouldn't be a bad thing to learn either. So yeah, also the more you put in your design, I think you have to learn. So if you start putting in VC ops and SRM, then you'll be challenged for that kind of stuff also. So you have to be skilled in those also. And if you mention vCloud in your design, they're going to challenge you on vCloud.
Yeah, so the trick there is you want pre-submission. So this is before you submit your design. You want to consume as much information as possible. Like Craig said earlier, sit down with your SMEs at your organization, from your vendor, wherever, and consume that information and own it. Because if you don't, what will happen is your design will be accepted, and then you're on the 60-day countdown trying to play catch-up, and you don't want to be doing that. You want to be prepared before you submit.
James was saying actually you can be partially fictitious for DT, so that's my mistake. James, I thought I was sure cloud it had to be it had to be a real-world design. Maybe, as you say, maybe partly fictitious. If you're missing out certain portions, then maybe they won't know. But it does have to be predominantly a real-world design. You can't make it. But yeah, we'll check on that. As I said, I'd heard that it had to be a real-world design. Maybe you can have a portion of it fictitious. Maybe that's not a problem. I think they're just trying to get people to do real-world design. And then, Manny, you were saying, what do you think of a design that is part DCV, part View? My opinion on that is if you put in View, they're going to challenge you on View stuff. I know that Simon Long, he submitted his DCV design, and his was based on a View environment. Obviously, he did submit stuff that was the View portion underneath, but he did mention also how it was built for DT, and he passed it. So it is possible, but you will be challenged on DT stuff also. So be careful that the more you bring into it,
that's right. That's your attack surface. If you mention it, it's fair game.
I think one of the things that I've obviously not been yet to my defence, and hopefully I will get there, but I questioned all my design decisions by asking myself, what's the impact of this on my design to other areas, and what's the risk, and how can I mitigate it? They're the key things that I try to make sure that I covered off on every design decision along the way. Obviously no design can be perfect, but that's the advice that I would give anybody preparing for it. What's the impact? What's the risk? How can I mitigate it?
and then have lots of reviews from your peers, VCDX level reviews from your peers, because as human beings, anything we create, we link ego to that, and we tend to get blind spots on what we create. So you'll be going through your design and you'll think everything is hunky-dory, and Craig had a very good point there. You need to cross-reference your decisions and look at mitigating risk and what were the options and what is the impact of this on my business requirements. Then you'll get one of your VCDX level peers to review it, and straight away he'll come up with, oh, this doesn't make sense, that doesn't make sense, and this doesn't make sense. And then you'll go, yeah, you're right. Why didn't I pick that up before? It's because of that. It's because we're naturally protective of what we create. So it's very important to get the peer reviews before you submit the design, okay? Because you want to minimize the amount of weaknesses in your paperwork.
Yeah, and then Gareth, you're asking, as a VCDX, are you encouraged by VMware to specialize in a particular area, aka storage, BCDR, network availability? Kind of as we've been saying, you have to be minimally competent and have a good T-skill breadth of all of that. So all of that stuff that you mentioned is all in the blueprint. So you have to understand all of it, kind of as in a diagram was showing. You don't have to be an absolute specialist in it. Obviously, if you're a specialist in some of that, that's always beneficial. But you have to have a good understanding of it. So if you don't understand stuff like that, then they're going to find out.
Greg, can I just pop in there? So if you go to my blog site, vcdx133.com, and just click on the VCDX tab, in there I've got study guides for each of those technical silos. And there I just propose some questions and some study items. So if you read through each of those technology silos and you can understand and talk about what I've listed, then you're minimally competent. And if you're not, then that there is your study guide of what you need to address.
Cool. And then, yeah, Renee stuck in here some special mentions. So a lot of this is obviously, I don't know if you want to explain the Zachman very quickly.
So the Zachman framework is a guy, I think his name is John A. Zachman. The VCDX framework and the Cisco Certified Architect framework are based on the Zachman framework. So when you go through the VCAP, DCD blueprints, you'll see there's a link there for the Zachman framework. There's a white paper from it. So if you're interested in understanding more how all of this fits together, the conceptual model to the logical design and to the physical design, then that's worth a read just to broaden your understanding. And also to make sure that you just don't get stuck with the VMware way of thinking, it's worth looking at some of the Cisco Certified Architect materials. Like if you have a look at that breakout session down the bottom, they're one of the main contributors to the Cisco certification program. He does an excellent discussion of what the difference is between an enterprise level architect, a subject matter expert who designs, and an SME who is an administration expert. And it's just interesting reading to make you understand exactly what a VCDX is and what you're required to do when you're defending on the day.
Cool. Okay, so we've kind of covered that. So pre-submission, yeah, I don't know who wants to explain this part. Renee, maybe you can explain the baby dragons part, and if that's your word.
Yeah, so baby dragons is a term that was loosely coined, I think, by Chris Wall, maybe. This is 3 or 4 years ago, and it's about using cheap desktop hardware and re-provisioning it or re-skilling it for vSphere labs in your home. So trying to get the most that you can out of that hardware for home labs, right? So that's a baby dragon. Then you've got big dragons where you can buy a single large enterprise server, so there you're investing maybe $10,000 US, and then you go with embedded labs within that single large piece of infrastructure. just to give a comparison, I've just implemented a vSAN lab with baby dragons, and I did that for $4,100 US, buying parts sourced locally. So I've got a 3-node vSAN cluster with 6 terabytes running. If I was to do a big dragon, so buy an IBM X3850 or whatever and load that up with RAM and SSDs, that's probably going to cost me around $12,000 US. The other lab alternative is WorkLabs. Okay, so if you have that resource available,
invest in yourself.
And you can maintain a WorkLab, a static configuration, then you should do that. And of course, you've got hands-on labs which are free. So yeah, so I suppose the message there is you need to be able to build your environment, whatever's in your design, blindly in terms of do it many times repetitively, because you're going to be building a lot of your documentation of that, right? So if you have a look down at some of the points, if the project is past or current. So if you're using a VCDX design that was actually 2 years ago that you implemented with a customer, you are not necessarily going to have access to that infrastructure so that you can work out, oh, how did we actually do that, right? And then you're referring to notes, you're calling people up to try and help you who were a part of that project, and it becomes very difficult. So there, I suppose the message is, if you can implement a design that has simulators that are available, okay, so Cisco UCS have a simulator, NetApp ONTAP is a simulator, EMC VNX also, then you can at least build that in your lab at home, and then you can continue building your project documentation that you require for the submission.
That's a key point, Rene. I think that having the ability to use your own lab to document and go back and refer to is very beneficial.
Yeah, I would say it's crucial to your success.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more. So on my design, it's on vSphere 5. So in my lab at the moment, I've kind of got, well, I've got 3 DL380 G6s, just about 170 gigabytes of RAM across them, 2 HP Store Virtuals running, which are storage area networks, with SRM and all the goodies. And that was an investment in myself, and I made before I even thought about the VCDX, because unfortunately, whether we like it or not, being in IT and trying to be good at what you do requires an investment in your own personal time, and I saw it as an investment in myself, so I spent some cash.
Yeah, with those specs, I'm guessing you did. So for baby dragons, for me it cost me $4,200 US for the smallest lab that I could build that was still enterprise functional. Are you guys able to talk about your investment, just to give people an idea of how much it costs to set up?
I don't even have to be honest. I don't even know what mine equates to anymore. I've been building it over time. So I've got a couple of HP microservers, an Iomega NAS, a Brocade switch, and it's just kind of building over time. And as I think many said, I also use AutoLab. So I also use my laptop, which is quite beefy. I have AutoLab on top. So it's kind of a hybrid of both. And I think that, as Craig said, I've been using that for ages. I think that's really important, even for the VCAP DCA. Unless you're lucky enough to have a work lab where you can break things and fix it, you're going to probably need one at home to be able to do a lot of this stuff. And especially for the VCDA, my design was 2 years ago. I had to go in and do a lot of screenshots because it has to be customer specific. I had to change my whole lab to be that old customer and then put in screenshots of how I did things, because unfortunately in the real design, the customer never asked for certain portions, so I had to create it from my own lab.
Yep, for sure. Very important.
Yeah, so then also we're kind of saying what will your project be? So I think we've kind of answered that. It must be enterprise level. Yeah, so we've kind of covered that. Actual, fictional, we've actually covered also. Past or current. If you can do a current one, that's great. I think we would all probably recommend that, as we're kind of saying, if you're working on a design that was 2 years ago, then it's quite difficult to have it fresh in your mind, be able to speak to the people at that point and say, why did we make this decision, or why did we do this? So if you have a design that you think is great and it's current, then I would highly recommend doing it that way, because then at least you've got VCDX in mind. Because unfortunately for my design, I did it for a customer, and it was, at least I feel, it was a very good design, but I didn't think of it as a VCDX level design. So certain documentation was never asked for, so I never did it. So yeah, I would recommend that.
And that's a problem with the real world. Obviously, if you're a real life architect and you're consulting to customers, the engagement is normally 1 or 2 weeks or whatever, and they don't have enough budget in that project timeline to have super detailed documentation. So what you're delivering here as part of the VCDX is like the Rolls-Royce of designs. And no one else does these things. It's only the VCDX program for you to prove yourself.
I think if you actually charge your customers for the amount of time you invested in a VCDX design, you won't have many customers left by the end of the year.
No.
Very true.
Yeah, it is, and it's an interesting one. I've never come across a customer who has asked for the level of detail that's in the VCDX. Maybe it probably does come down to costing and people having.
There's one customer that I do know of, and that's the U.S. Department of Defense, and they invest in a framework. Like, for instance, they're still running on vSphere 4.1, I think, or 4.0, and they require the full IT service management documentation, and they do that because they know they have service people who need to move from place to place, and they all have to do things the same way. So definitely the military around the world, different military organisations, they all do this, but in the private sector, in the business world, not very common at all.
Yeah. And then I think we said business critical or mission critical. I think kind of it has to be kind of both, essentially. If I'm not mistaken. I mean,
just what I meant by business critical, I would imagine for me is 4 nines or 5 nines of availability. Business critical tends to be in the enterprise. Mission critical is where you're going up to 6 or 7 nines of availability, and their people's lives depend upon it, or it's a nuclear reactor facility or something like that. For enterprise designs, business critical is fine, I think, and if you are designing to 4 nines of availability or 5 nines of availability, then that's fine. That's not a problem.
Yeah. And then, yeah, we said kind of how long will it take to prepare this? So I think we kind of covered that in a way. I think it depends on a lot of people, but
I think 100 to 200 plus hours is.
Yeah, I think over 200 hours is probably realistic. I know mine was over 200 hours. Craig's was over 200 hours. Yours was, I assume, 2 of them, but yours equated to a sibling amount. And I know Bobby's was also near that. So I think it does take a while, hence why the sooner you can start it, the better.
I think another key point as well, Greg, is that the hours that I put into it, and also Greg as well, I can't speak on behalf of Renee or Bobby, was because our designs we had already done. If you have a design coming up, or if you actually use your work time as well, obviously your personal investment will be less than that because it's done by your day-to-day activities. So my advice is try and do as much as you can in work time.
Absolutely, and that's where the support of your employer is so important. Like for me, my design was all for the organisation that I work for because I'm a customer. I'm not a partner or an employee of VMware. and that was instrumental because I was just delivering perfect documentation for the company that I worked for, you know, and this is always good when auditors come around, particularly if you work for a financial organisation.
And then, yeah, we said start from scratch, link BR to LD to PD with numbering links. I think we've kind of mentioned that a bit. I mean, if you're, yeah, go for it.
Yeah, Greg, can I just talk about that one? The reason I put that in there was that when I did my first submission, I took an organic approach to my design and I just started writing, figuring, oh, I'll work it all out later. And that was a big mistake because I ended up with this massive glob of 100 and something pages. And when it came to trying to link my business requirements to my logical design to my physical design, it was an absolute mess, and I basically had to go in and rewrite the whole thing. So from the start, do your business requirements first, do them with numbering, then do your logical design, and then link that to the physical design. And the less words that you use, the better, right? Because when you do the submission, the panelists only have 8 hours to spend on your submission. And if you have loads of blah blah in, then your scoring will be a lot lower than it can be.
That's a key point there. I would advise anybody who's preparing for it at the moment to write down the business requirements, your constraints, your assumptions and risks, and then at that point in time, get them peer reviewed. The reason I say that is they form your whole design. If they're out of kilt, don't make sense, your design will be out of kilt and won't make sense.
For sure,
yeah, and I think for your VCDX design, the guys do want you to link back. They want you to prove that you've met every single requirement that you've mentioned. So you've got to do loads of links. So if you've got certain requirements, obviously don't then go, oh, I've only got 5 requirements, then it won't be accepted. But you've got to be aware that whatever requirements you've created, those have got to be met to the design. And if there's any impacts to meeting those requirements, you've got to try and make sure that that doesn't happen or find a workaround for it. But yeah, you've got to try and meet every single one of those requirements and prove in every single point something maybe I think all of us did in our designs, but I don't know if it's something you have to do, is all of us linked back to each portion we did this, and we said we did this because of this requirement. I chose this because of this requirement. So that is something that you have to prove. You have to show that you are meeting the customer's requirement.
Yeah, so Greg, in John Aristid's book, and also when you go on the boot camps, he actually talks quite a bit about linking requirements and using matrices. And I know Academy X, that's a part of that, and also the VCDX Mentor Program. One of the exercises there is the Design Decision Workbook, and that's where you link all of that together. And this is the key thing to the VCDX, making sure that you're delivering something that meets your customer's requirements. And if you're not, then you're failing.
Yeah. Also, guys, I'm noticing we've been going on an hour, which I thought was going to be the case anyhow. So maybe what we'll do, if you guys are up for this, is we'll finish this slide, and then we can actually kind of do this as a series. I think a lot of people have a lot of questions, and I think we've got a lot of slides. You could be here for a while still, which is great.
Greg, I think we've got. Greg, can you just have a look? I think we've got 2 more slides, have we? Can you just have a quick look?
Oh, really? Okay, well then, if that's the case, then we can probably finish it off. Let me jump through that quickly. So post-submission.
So this is pre-submission. We have.
Yeah, you're right.
Well, we've only got 2 more slides to go.
Okay, well, we've got 2 more slides. Okay, then we'll carry on. If we've only got maybe 10 more minutes, don't want to drag.
If everyone's, we should be able to finish this in. We should be able to finish these 2 slides in 15 minutes because we've talked about a lot of it already.
Cool. Sorry, we're getting messages from people saying keep going, which is great. So common stumbling blocks. I think Renee touched on this a bit. A lot of people are isolated, so maybe you're very good at backups because that's a large portion of what you do alongside VMware, but you don't know a lot of things. Like I kind of knew it when I came in, and it's something I'm preparing for my next VCDX, is I'm not very strong in storage and networking because it's not something I get to touch often as a consultant, because normally people will ask EMC or NetApp to come in to do the storage, and normally it's internal networking people to do the networking. So when it gets in depth, my knowledge was lacking. And I think, a lot of the common stumbling blocks is if you're not very good at, as Renee said, then you should probably start looking at doing it fairly soon. VCDX submission. So I think we've kind of covered that already. Actually, cover all the areas of the blueprint, and as Renee said, the guys only have 8 hours to review. So people going through your submission, they only look at it for 8 hours.
And this is Bobby, real quick. Just remember that you have to submit the guides as well. I actually missed the December 2013 submission date because I didn't have enough time to get all my guides done. So you're going to invest a lot of hours doing the architecture guide, which is the main piece, but you also have to put in and submit all those other guides. So just keep in mind.
Yeah,
and that's a key point. Just to cover off what actually makes up a VCDX application is your architecture design, which is obviously your design in the first place. You then got your installation guide, which is basically, I give this guide to somebody, can they follow it and actually install your design? You've got your validation testing as well. So does it actually do what it's meant to do, and how do you verify it? You then have your implementation plan, which is essentially a project plan. And then last of all, you have your operational procedures. That's day-to-day activities to manage, monitor, and operate your environment. And then last but not least, the actual application form as well. So there's a lot of stuff to do.
And that application form is a good day and a half, 2 days of filling it out correctly, because that's the first thing they read.
Yeah. And then I think we've kind of covered the reviews of all your documents. Try and get it reviewed before your submission. Maybe even try and aim. What you need to do is finish all your, at least even your architecture design probably first. Get that done. Get it sent out to people. Give people enough time to have a look at it, build up questions on it, give you feedback, and enough time for you to look at that and make any changes that they might have noticed or they feel you should do before you first submit it, because you don't want to be sitting up till the early hours of the morning before submission trying to get final pieces in, because that's just going to stress you out, and that's a very good thing. So yeah, I would recommend trying to get as much of it done as early as possible, because yeah, time does catch up with you pretty quickly. Before you know it, it's the time to submit, and you've got that horrible feeling in your stomach.
Just now that they have the mentoring program in place, if you're a candidate, please use it, because they're the mechanism that John Aristide has developed and put in place. They really do give you an excellent measure of where you're at from a design submission perspective. So make sure you sign up.
Cool. So post-submission, so as Renee said, that 60 days. So you've got a 30-day waiting period. Go for it.
Yeah. Yeah, so just post-submission, as soon as you submit on your, if this is your first offence, you're going to be tempted to sit back and just relax because you don't know whether you're going to be accepted or not. If you've done your correct preparation, there's no reason why you shouldn't be accepted. So just keep the pressure on, Don't slack off, join your study groups, and then focus on getting your presentation ready, and also making sure that you understand the weaknesses of the design that you've submitted, right? Because this is your attack surface. When you step into the defense, they already have the attack matrix of what questions they're going to ask you. It's already been mapped out, right? and you just need to make sure that you're ready.
Cool. And then, yeah, become an SME on the products used within your design. So, yeah, as we're kind of saying, if you've got a lot of products in there, make sure you know what you're doing. You try and maybe learn additional stuff. So if you've obviously, I'm sure you will have HA and DRS, for example, in your design. Maybe go to the Frank Denneman and Duncan Epping book again and try and learn the intricate mechanisms of it that we all forget very soon after studying it because it's so in-depth. But that's the kind of stuff you're going to want to have at your fingertips in your design, that even if it comes to maybe not in your defense, well, the defense of your design, but actually the two scenarios, you have that knowledge in your mind to be able to do something with it, and maybe that will also help you in those scenarios.
Absolutely. I think it's key as well, Greg, to not forget the basics. So one of the things that I am massively guilty of is thinking everyone knows what HA is, what DRS does, and how they impact your design, and what qualities they give to a business, about availability of virtual machines running applications which can't run any clustered in-guest operations. So yes, go deep, but don't forget the basics.
Yeah, Greg, that's a good point.
Go on, Bobby.
Because whenever you're doing a design, you may know everything because you're the VMware expert, but you have to challenge every one of your decisions and say, hey, why am I doing this? And you take HA and DRS for granted, but you have to put into your design document why you chose this setting and not this setting. And so you make your decisions on what you're going to implement, but you also have to validate why you didn't choose the other ones.
Yeah, that's the main one. Is a lot of the defense you put in your design, and you know why you did something, but you really know, why didn't I choose the other things? Why didn't I go down, instead of doing, I don't know, instead of choosing, if you went with EMC, for example, and you chose PowerPath, why did you choose PowerPath instead of round robin? If you had to do round robin, how would you have done it and why? That's the kind of stuff you should know, because they don't want you to be a specialist in just one thing. So if you've always been using UCS, for example, then maybe they'll ask you other technologies around that to prove that if you had to do that, you would know how to do it, because they want you to be able to go in as if you're VMware and have the knowledge to be able to help their customers, even if maybe you're not a consultant like myself and Craig. They still want you to be at that level where if they could trust you to do it without them being there, and that's the level they're looking for.
Yeah. The other thing to be careful of, just one thing to be careful of is the differences between the different versions of vSphere, right? So if you submitted a vSphere 5.1 design, and in your spare time you're studying up on vSphere 5.5, right, and HA has changed quite a bit there, right, with the addition of App HA, right. Just be careful that you don't cross-pollinate the different settings and the configuration maximums and everything, because when you go into the defense, it's like you're in a time warp and everything just blurs, you know. So it's very important to keep yourself grounded and just make sure that you know what you studied is the right version of vSphere, the right version of hardware for whatever particular compute, network, and storage system that you deployed in your design. You know, it's just very important to keep that on track in your mind, and don't pollute it with other stuff.
Absolutely, that's a key point there, Renee. Don't pollute it. So I've been trying to not look above vSphere 5 since February, essentially, because ultimately my brain's only so big and I can only digest so much information, and there's been changes with storage I/O control, network I/O control, vSphere 5, as you said, App HA. Ultimately, in my day-to-day life, I do work on vSphere 5.5 designs, vSphere 4 to vSphere 5X upgrades as well, but I always try and go back to how did this work in the version that I'm going to try and defend on. That's the key thing.
Yeah, very important.
And then, yeah, the presentation development. So Renee's recommended about 60, which is probably a pretty good amount. You probably want 20 in your initial presentation and then 40 backup slides. And you only want to really cover a lot of the design highlights and possibly any questions you feel you might be asked. So the slides kind of build over time. I think for me, I know Renee and Bobby, yours adapted as we went through a lot of our mock panels. Is people will ask you a lot of questions, and after a while you think, you know what, I keep getting asked about this. Instead of having to whiteboard it in the defense, if I have a slide for it and I can talk through it, that will probably save you a lot of time and you won't be under pressure. I had a question in my defense that unfortunately I didn't do a slide for, and I regret it because I was going to do it too. And whilst on a whiteboard, I totally started getting mixed up with myself and making some mistakes. So when you start going through a lot of your slides, try and make sure that you cover a lot of the design highlights, but also if you think you're going to be asked something like that person I knew that didn't do site failover in his design, one of his backup slides was failover and how he would have done it for the real-world customer, and that was all that was required. So I think that's always good.
And that all comes down to your presentation. If you're with a good study group, you will be working on your presentation all the way through to the day of the defense, right? Because you'll be constantly evolving it and fine-tuning it. The trick with the presentation is to use it as a launch pad for your speaking and the delivery of the information that you need to deliver verbally, right? Don't get sucked into reading loads of text off the screen, okay? Brevity is your friend. You just want bullet points, good diagrams that you can read on a projector. So if you have loads of diagrams that are very detailed and the panelists can't read them, then all it's going to do is confuse them, right, and make life a lot harder for you. So you need to use the presentation to help you with the delivery of information. And a perfect defense is if you talk for 75 minutes without a single question, because that means that you're knocking the bell and scoring every step of the way. And for each design decision that you talk about, your major design decision, you want to just naturally, in the flow of your speech, talk about the alternate scenarios of how you would have done that.
So one of the key things that I found out, sorry guys, was on my design, I went back through it just recently and looked at all of my diagrams and said to myself, if I was presenting this to somebody who's on the same level as myself or above, can I really explain how this works? And the answer was no. So I spent 20 hours over the last weekend redoing every single one of my diagrams so that I felt more comfortable with it. So hopefully if I am accepted to defend, I can then zoom in on areas and explain exactly how the interrelationship works between certain vSphere components.
Yeah, and that there naturally moves on to, so we're talking about 20 slides for your main presentation. You should be able to deliver that information in 15 minutes, just talking normally and naturally. Then have 40 support slides, which is the deep dive. So if a panelist asks you a question about, let's say, network I/O control and how you implemented end-to-end quality of service, then you go to your deep dive slides so that you can zoom in and break down and break that down for them.
And it's important to know your slides also, like know where in your slide deck,
back to front.
As James was mentioning, you've got to really know your deck. Don't waste time looking for things. You should really know it. But also, I think it happened to Renee, Bobby, and I. And Renee, I think it happened to you for both of your designs. Is the presentation laptop didn't seem to like PowerPoint.
Right.
So all of us went through it in a PDF. Also be prepared to maybe have to go to the PDF one, which fortunately we were prepared because Renee said it happened to him the first time. But yeah,
And it
don't
happened
think
in
you're going to have
seconds.
amazing shortcuts and then all of a sudden you're going through a PDF.
Yeah. And those 60 slides, you should be able to talk about that entire slide set, and it should be right on 75 minutes.
Yeah, that 75 minutes blows by also. Trust me, you think it's long, it absolutely blows by. I didn't think I was going to have enough, and in the end, I wish I had more time. So it blows by, that 75 minutes.
It does.
Then, yeah, we said presentation skills. I think we've kind of covered a lot of that anyways. You've got to practice your presentation skills. I think with mock panels, presenting in front of people is very important. Make sure you're very steady, concise, being able to think on your feet with more mock panels and going through your presentation more and more. It will become more natural to you, hopefully, and you should be better at it.
Even if you're not used to presenting in front of people, then you will be severely disadvantaged. Also, if you're not a native English speaker, because all the defences are in English, you need to start practicing. And the easiest way to start is in your house, no one around, stand up, have your laptop there, stimulating a screen with a projector, and start talking. You know, just develop your presentation, just a basic presentation, and start talking, and just start developing those skills. Because you've got to have them. I know they're soft skills, but they're very important, as well as the ability to think on your feet, right? And that comes down to a panelist will ask you a question, right? You don't know the answer. So what you can do is start thinking out loud, right? Because you need to talk while you're thinking. You can't be silent. And then just work through it. And if you can't work through it and come to a logical answer, then you say, okay, I don't know this. I know where the answer is. This is how I would get it. And then you move on to the next thing. Okay? Whatever you do, don't stand silent. That's the extreme. And the other extreme is start blathering. Blathering for 10 minutes. That doesn't help you. And it's very important to keep a cool head when you're under pressure.
Definitely. And then, yeah, we've kind of covered it a lot, actually. For the study group, get in a study group as soon as possible. Use flashcards. So I think I stumbled across Quizlet. I can't remember who mentioned it. DCDX from PEX mentioned he did that. And then I copied that, and I think a lot of people have started using Quizlet also. So Quizlet's really good.
Yeah, Quizlet was amazing. Quizlet was amazing. That was really good. When we joined the study group, we were doing the flashcards. It made such a difference because before that, I was just using Word documents, and it doesn't work. Quizlet is amazing.
Yeah, and it's really good to ask you a lot of questions. You can get an app for your tablet, and it works really well.
And it's free.
Yeah, exactly, and it's free. So then also, yeah, you can do a lot of your mocks with people, get a lot of feedback. The link in here is for the EMEA DCDX study group. So it's something I kind of started putting together. I copied an idea from a lot of what the PEX guys did. And then Vicential on Twitter, his name has cleared me, which is bad. James Bowling. He's done a US one, so maybe get in contact with him. I know a lot of the guys who are preparing together are on his. I think a lot of the stuff we've also done.
Bobby can talk about that as well, because I know he's just hooked up his study group in the US.
Yeah, I recently reached out to a couple of the guys. I knew that they were submitting theirs, and it's going to be great because the last study group, I love those guys, but I was in the U.S., Greg was in the U.K., Rene was in the Saudi Arabia, and we were in 3 disparate time zones, and my new study group is all in the Eastern time zone, so pretty pumped for that.
It does prove to you, though, that you can do it, though, that 3 different time zones is possible, which I was quite impressed with.
Yeah, for sure. And also just the dynamics of the study group. 2 or 3 guys. Don't go any more unless they're listening, right? Because it doesn't work very well. If you've got 3 guys with a study group, you're doing Q&As and doing your flashcards and everything, that works very well. The other thing I'll say about the study group is that 60-day countdown happens so quickly, right? So really, you want to be doing something with your study group every day, even if it's just half an hour, you know, and just get into that habit of asking questions and delivering answers and getting the delivery of information to the common questions, getting that pitch perfect, you know. Like there should be no umming and ahhing, you know. It should be just delivery of information, bang, 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 and practice makes perfect. It's so important.
The constructive criticism, as James Cross would say, the study groups are really good. It gives you constructive criticism. I did a very quick mock very early on after I had found out I was defending, and it was a baptism of fire, to say the least. Probably, as Renee's saying, a group of 3 people probably would have been good. I had about, I think, 5 or 6 people shouting out at different points, which was got pretty intense, to say the least. But it was very good. I wrote down all the questions from all my mock panels, put it into Quizlet, and made sure I knew the answers to those. And a lot of the questions I got my defense were ones from mock panels. So mock panels were really, really helpful. And yeah, it kind of goes on to the next point of think like a panelist. I think if I was looking at this design, what would I ask? You know, what would I do? And I think I'm looking at other people's designs. I had a lot of questions on theirs, and I took those questions and go, oh, what if I ask that in my design? Because that's really important, and you've got to be able to think, well, what? Yeah, as we're saying, maybe what's obvious to you, they might say, okay, well, why did you choose that? Why didn't you choose a dedicated failover host, for example? You know, and to you, you think, oh, you're mad, but then why didn't you? You've got to know the reason to that, and that's always very important.
Yeah, responding, I don't know, or it's a best practice. That's not a valid answer. You need to have a tangible reason, because remember, as a VCDX, you are the guy who is breaking best practices because you're an expert. You need to have an answer for everything, and that's why this prep is so important, you know. And the cross-pollination. So with thinking like a panelist, I'll just tell you a little story. So when I first reviewed, I think it was Greg's design, right? So that was the first time I thought as a panelist, right? And just the amount of energy, the mental energy that goes into breaking down someone's design, it's an exhaustive process, right? So you really need to get into thinking like a panelist and getting those skills where you can dissect a design, right? Someone else's design, because ego is not involved there. And then once you have that skill, you need to apply that to your design, right? And this is where the cross-pollination and breaking it down and preparing your strategy. How are you going to present the flow of information? Yep, go on.
That's a key point there, Renee. So if in your day job you have the opportunity to peer review other people's designs, I suggest you do it. Not only from the point of view that you can learn things from their design, but secondly as well though, ask them the questions, what's the impact on doing that? Why did you choose to do this? Why did you choose to do that? And then give them feedback, and then maybe have a quick 5-minute conference call with them to go through those particular poignant points.
Yeah.
Yep, practice makes perfect.
And then, yeah, you've got to have a strategy. So you've got to know, you know, what is your strategy? How are you looking to go through it, and really plan it out.
Just on strategy, Greg, just on strategy. So one of the things the reason I listed that there was, if you listen to the APJ brown bag with Michael Webster when they did a VCDX discussion similar to what we're doing, Josh and Michael Webster talked about in their designs that they submitted, they deliberately had a weakness that they included in that design, specifically so they could be asked about that during the defense. so that they could respond with their canned set of responses, okay, that was a part of their strategy. Right? So that's what I mean by that. So I suppose when you take that on the flip side, it's back to what are the weaknesses in your design, intended or unintended, and then work out what are the questions that the panelists are going to ask me, and how am I going to deliver my spiel of information for 75 minutes, okay, where I am addressing all of those issues. Okay, and it's not an easy thing to do. It's a lot of work. And this is where the study group and having VCDX level reviews of your design, doing mock panels with VCDX level guys, it's so important, you know. It's all just about preparing yourself and evolving. And over that 60-day time period until you hit the defense, every day you're learning something new and you're modifying the strategy slightly and you're fine-tuning. Up until the day of the defense, like on the morning of the defense, I was still making changes to my PowerPoint presentation. It just doesn't stop. You're constantly thinking and strategizing.
And then I think we've pretty much covered the VCDX mock panels. Book your travel ASAP. Yeah, if you're not as fortunate as what I was, what Renee said, you're not fortunate that you're not close to it, then yeah, book your travel fairly soon.
Just one thing on the travel. The VCDX program, if you reach out to them before you get your acceptance and say, I'm traveling internationally, I would prefer this time on this day for my defense so I can book my travel, they will give priority to people who are traveling internationally. So don't be afraid to ask. They respond very quickly. Just one thing on the mock panels. When you're doing mock panels, most of it will be by WebEx. It is very important that you do face-to-face mock panels. Very important. Just get used to having people in front of you, talking to them, making eye contact, making sure that your back is not to the panelists, that you're able to talk, looking at the panelists and quickly referring to your presentation on the screen. Okay, you should be able to go through that without even looking at it. You know, you should just have a script in your head that you just deliver flawlessly.
So just going back a moment to the point that was made by Renee, one of the things that Greg was very good at doing, and he decided he was going to go for the VCDX. I believe it was around about September, October time last year, and there was a number of us who were at VMworld Europe. And what Greg did, which was quite a stealth at the time, he signed us all up for having a VCDX attempt this year in the UK to try and get a defence date in Frimley. And I've got to have my hat off to Greg. We have got 2 defences this year in the UK. That's I may put it down to Greg's ability to get a number of us lambs to the slaughter. Yeah, to get signed up.
I wouldn't take full responsibility for that, but yeah, I did really push for a Frimley one. I think, as Craig's saying, if you want one close to you, obviously if you're in a very random location, that might not work for you. I think Frimley was a pretty good one because also there's a lot of local VCDXs, although I know for a fact I think there wasn't very many English people on any of the Frimley defences anyhow. Not that that's a problem, but I think it does allow a lot of local guys to come in, obviously Germany and Holland and a lot of other countries who have a lot of VCDXs is also very local. So yeah, try and say to the guys, speak to any of them and say, look, you know, I really want one. I kept on asking for a Frimley one, and the guys were really good. They actually opened up a whole vote.
It's voting on the forum, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah, it started on the forum, and it was just literally, okay, can you voice your interest if you would be interested in a Frimley one? Because actually, I tried last year for a Frimley one, and there wasn't enough people. And then I tried this year, and I think there was quite a large amount of people, hence why there's now 2 defences, which is great. So, yeah, try and stick that in. Also, as Renee said, 1 week of vacation before D-Day is very helpful. I was working up until pretty soon before my defense, and I recommend probably a week vacation before so you don't burn out, because yeah, it's certainly a lot of work. If you can actually relax and take your time, then that's really, really helpful.
And it's that sprint to the finish, Dan, and that D-Day, that date is just looming in your mind, and it just takes your entire life over, because all you're doing is focusing on preparing for that day. And there really the trick is keep cool about it and just know that you've prepared yourself, that you've put in the hours, that you're ready, and it's just a matter of polishing your presentation and your delivery. All of the hard work should have already been done, you know, like all of the T-skilling, all of that's there, it's done. It's just strategy and delivering your presentation. That's all it's about, and not freaking yourself out. Take time to exercise, eat properly, spend time with your family, that kind of stuff. And maybe do 2, 3, 4 hours a day just in 1 hour chunks of prep. And then on the day, so most of us will be traveling to the defence. You really don't want to be freaking out on the plane and trying to play catch up. You just want to be able to put the books away and just keep on going through your presentation and just working out what you're going to say, and then just walk into the defence on the day and just knock it out of the park. That's what you want to do. You just want to keep it cool.
Cool. And then, yeah, I think you've covered kind of the D-Day, keep your cool, be calm, be confident. Hopefully you've got everything out of the way before then. Well, if you fail, I think we'll probably take the drop off, but I probably failed, actually Renee, you failed first time. So if you do fail, as I think we're all kind of saying, and I say it to myself to make myself kind of also feel better, is you do learn a lot from it. There's a lot of people who have failed. I can't remember who said it to me, but I think it was Matt Vanderbilt said to me, look, he failed the first time and now he's a double VCDX. So it's certainly not something to be ashamed about. And if you do fail it, yeah, you get good feedback, look at that, plan what you want to do, try and better your skills. As I said, I've got a blog post in VCDX round 2. I'm really going in deep. I'm really trying to cover a lot of T-skilling, prepping up on new stuff, refreshing a lot of knowledge, because the gap between my DCA and my VCDX was a good 18 months in itself. So I think, yeah, use the feedback for it to try and make it a lot better, and yeah, give yourself a lot of time. I mean, I'm not planning to redefend this year per se. Maybe I will. At the moment, I'm not planning to do it again this year.
Yeah, and regardless of whether you pass or fail, your colleagues will notice such a major difference in your skill level. Like, you'll get comments all the time about, man, you really have evolved. Like, stuff that you're talking about now, I don't even know, you know. So you will really evolve, and it's about the journey. And if you do fail, it's not the end of the world. The only question is then, do you really want to make the effort to reapply and try again? Or is that it for you? You've got what you wanted out of it, and you let it slide. Maybe do it in a year's time or 2 years' time, you know. It's not the end of the world. It's all about the journey and getting the most out of it and evolving as an architect. Because let's face it, it's hard. And just to be accepted, and just to be accepted to defend is an honour in itself.
Yeah, and you do learn a heck of a lot along the way. I mean, I've learned tons, and all of us have learned tons. Even from the VCAPs, we all learned tons. So I think the journey of it and learning it a lot is really, really helpful. So certainly just doing that, and even in my day job, it's made things, I look at things a lot differently. I try and take a lot of methodologies I learned from the VCDX to apply to my day job, and it's made me ask better questions and actually find things in designs and projects that I possibly wouldn't have noticed if I hadn't been doing the VCDX. So it's certainly worth it for that. So yeah, trying to do that, and then yeah, we've kind of actually up to the question time, and that covers an hour and a half, which is good. Please, just to let people kind of jump off if they want. What we're going to do is, I've recorded all of this, so I'm going to try and get the video app onto the vBrownBag/professional VMware YouTube channel and get out posting fairly soon about it. iTunes-wise, I'm not the person who's very good at that. Actually, Marshall and a couple of other guys know how to do that, but we'll try and get that up as soon as possible. And also, yeah, there's our blog, there's our Twitter handles. Pretty much all of us are quite happy to answer any questions. I don't know how many of us would be interested in reviewing people's designs. Maybe if you ask us very nicely and we have time, we can do it. And also, especially good luck to Craig and Bobby, who have submitted for July and are waiting, actually they're going through their technical reviews at the moment, so I'm sure you guys will be accepted to defend, and good luck with your defenses.
Thank you very much.
Bobby's jumped off already because it's a shame he's in the US and he's probably still meant to be working. So, as I say, I recognize the time, and I don't think many of us want to get beaten up by our wives, girlfriends, children. So I've got a few people asking that question of what was that tool that I was talking about, the quiz tool. It's called Quizlet, the Quiz L-E-T. It's free. You can sign up for it. It's really good. Actually, I really wish I had known about it for even my vCAT. It's really good, and I'll probably use it for my vCloud vCAT once I start looking at that. So yeah, really good tool. I can't remember who mentioned it. One of the PECs, ECDX partners, mentioned it. So I mentioned it on my blog, so credit to them there. Apologies, I can't remember your name right now. And yeah, thanks to Bobby and Craig and Renee. I think we could all talk all night, which is great. Looks like it's been really popular. Hopefully everyone got what they wanted out of it. And yeah, I think that was good. That covered really nicely. And yeah, have a good evening all. Thanks Renee, thanks Craig. And yeah, I'll try to get the recording up as soon as possible.
No problem. Pleasure to be part of it.
Cheers,
Absolutely.
guys.
Thanks, guys. Take it easy.